Hey there, it's time for another assault rifle in Battlefield 2042, and it's none less than the super special AC-42. Despite being around for quite some time now, I still see a lot of players using it wrong, which really is a pity, because done right, it's simply superb. It's a laser, it's with insane fire rate, but only if you do it right. The AC-42 is a very special weapon. It's 100% developed and manufactured by DICE. Doug, it's a game, of course it is. Well, yes, but let me explain. Normally in this section I explain the history of the weapon and what real life traits it got and how 2042 compares to it. But in this case I can't really do that. You see, the AC-42 is not made as a successor of any existing weapon. It kind of looks like a mix of TAR-21 and the Sturmgewehr 77, mainly because they are all bullpup assault rifles. Since there is no predecessor, why don't we take a moment looking at the bullpup construction? The general idea is to enable a longer internal barrel, which in turn preserves muzzle velocity and effective range. By having the magazine and the mechanics behind the trigger, the total size and weight of the weapon can be significantly decreased. The bullpup concept was originally tested more than 120 years ago by the British military, but it would take almost 80 years before successful design was implemented. Austrian army became the first military force to use bullpup rifles in 1977 with the Steyr AUG or Sturmgewehr 77. Some of you might recognize it from Counter-Strike. In Battlefield 2042, the AC-42 is a very unique fish. It's basically a laser. The English word for assault rifle kind of describes the purpose rather than the technique. The Swedish word automatkarbin is however a more technical description, and in that sense we don't want to use it as an assault rifle. You see, it has two firing modes, burst and single fire. The problem is that burst is the default firing mode, and a lot of people still use it when they play AC-42. Burst mode can be effective in games where the recoil is manageable and there is little to no spread. It usually is penalized by a little pause between shots. However, I don't consider Battlefield 2042 to be any of those, or rather the single fire mode is so powerful that it is the only thing you should ever use. Let me repeat, it's the only mode you should ever use. The fire rate is insane. So every click will result in a shot fired. With the extended barrel, the fire rate will decrease just a tiny bit, but otherwise, I basically haven't seen a limit for how fast you can fire. I guess if you're into that kind of stuff, you could create a macro that can fire insanely fast, purely for research of course. What you need to understand when playing AC-42 is that there is some damage drop-off, but you can basically duel with snipers. But since you have the fire rate, you're often still at an advantage when at medium to long range against most other weapons. Many players get very stationary when trying to hit targets far away, and that is perfect for someone with the AC-42 and a decent scope sight. In close combat, most players are more prone to move, and in a way, most full auto weapons have the upper hand. But if you have a decent aim, a very laser-like weapon will be as effective as your finger can click, especially if you aim for head. But don't burst. Just don't. The AC-42 is a very good weapon, no doubt, but unlike the AK, it's a bit more depending on the proper setup. As usual, some comes down to taste and playstyle, and well, I think it's pretty straightforward, but since we had quite a lot of debate about the AC-42 in the FML the other day, I'll have to acknowledge that there are different opinions. And it's okay to think different, as long as you think like me. Normally, I use the extended barrel pretty much all the time. It decreases the rate of fire, but increases bullet velocity. Rate of fire is mostly still limited to how much pain you can bring your mouse hammering that fire button, so it doesn't really matter too much. Maybe in close combat, but that shouldn't be a normal scenario anyway. I have the Warhawk compensator as an option, which decreases the vertical recoil. I do however don't mind the vertical recoil that much for the AC-42 anyway, so I don't use it that much. As a final option, I have the Type 4 heavy suppressor. The heavy suppressor is supposed to hide you completely from minimap when you fire, but you should be aware that there are a whole lot of other ways of getting spotted in Battlefield 2042. If you get that creepy feeling that the enemies knows exactly where you are, they probably do. And if so, you should consider not using the suppressor at all, as it has a negative impact on your firepower. I have come to like the Ghost Hybrid 1.25 to 2.5 sight, where I normally have it set to 1.25, and if the target is far away, I increase it to 2.5. I think it's a comfortable sight with good visibility, and it doesn't jump around too much because of the recoil. It's of course much down to personal preference. First option is the Raven 4 time for when the enemy is really far away. Beware though, at that distance the AC-42 is a little bit limited. You are reliant of either the enemy being disturbed by your fire or that he or she doesn't pay too much attention to you. Any good sniper should still be at an advantage over you at that distance. Final option isn't really an option. It's just the fusion holo because I thought it would be good, but I never use it. Why bother when I can use the Ghost Hybrid, which has nice mil dots and it's just awesome. When it comes to the ammo of the AC-42, there are a few different options. I think the standard issue, but with extended mag, is the perfect compromise. I also carry high power as an option, and while they are supposed to have increased effective range, it comes at the cost of less control, which often nullifies the benefits. To go with a smaller bag, it's rarely worth it. It's good to have as an option should you run out of ammo though. Final option is even more standard issue, but with standard mag size. Just more ammo, nothing more to it. As I like to move a lot when I play assault rifle, I use the Rattlesnake light grip. Remember that if you become standard with the AC-42, snipers only need to click your head once. I had the LS1 laser sight and the Cobra grip as options, but never really used them. Neither benefits anything you normally want to do with the AC-42. Common subject is whether or not the AC-42 is the best assault rifle. As I stated in my previous video about the AK, I consider the AK to be the best overall weapon in Battlefield 2042. It's not really a clear cut, but having had quite a few debates within FML, I thought maybe I should explain my reasoning a little bit further, so you don't think I'm stupid or something. So at longer ranges, the AC-42 is superior to the AK. There is no question about it. First and second sector of breakaway is basically made for the AC-42, and most sectors on Discarded, Manifest, Kaleidoscope and Hourglass also suits this very well. Probably forgot some map, but my point is that medium to long range sits very well with this weapon, if you can play it properly. If you just use burst fire all the time, you might end up killing a lot of people, but in my mind, you haven't really unlocked the full potential of the weapon. Anyone can play the AK to most of its potential, and it works regardless how you set it up. You can't really do wrong, and even the worst player will most likely have a good time with it, or at least better than most other weapons. The AC-42, however, is a different beast. There are tons of potential, and it's not particularly hard to play, but it requires a more specific playstyle or maybe rather control than the AK. While it doesn't require you to be any Einstein of fire weapons, it's probably not any weapon that suits every player. But you should definitely give it a go, but remember, it's not a sniper rifle or anything close. It can be a laser, but you shouldn't play it as a sniper. That's it for now. Hope you enjoyed the video. Cheers!